Well done, LBC, for getting rid of Katie Hopkins, who tweeted that there was a need for a final solution for terrorists following the Manchester bombing. Given that the term final solution is so totally associated with Hitler, the Holocaust, and the murder of 6 million Jews, her tweet got a lot of publicity all around the world, and Ms Hopkins, quite rightly, took a lot of flack. She later claimed that the comment was a mistake and that she'd hit the wrong button on her laptop and used the word final when she meant to use the word true. Who believes that? Ms Hopkins once described refugees coming to Europe in open boats as cockroaches, and since she parted company with LBC, she has tweeted, "I see myself as the Jesus of the outspoken." No doubt she's looking for a second coming, even though she still writes a column for the Mail online. Of course, her departure comes just a few weeks after Kelvin MacKenzie was dropped by The Sun when he wrote an incredibly rude column about Liverpool and made comments about the Everton footballer Ross Barkley that provoked allegations of racism. Personally, I think broadcasters and newspaper editors need to take more care when deciding who they let host programmes and who they let write columns. Of course, in a democracy, we want to read and hear a range of opinion, but there must be limits. And in broadcasting, there should also be proper balance.
It's a difficult one. I mean, the two people you mentioned have been huge names in this country and have got, in Katie's case, 750,000 followers on Twitter, whereas I've got 30,000. And there's a reason for that, is that they find a huge audience for this kind of very outspoken, very provocative fare. And, you know, what they do is very clever. And I'm not saying it's right, but it's very clever and people listen. And what we're seeing is really kind of the arrival of the shock jocks. And they are a couple of shock jocks. And what they do very cleverly and very successfully is all of us have got a sort of angel and a devil. And when something happens, I think what they do is they work out what is the most offensive, provocative thing I can say in this situation, which somehow appeals to the devil on your shoulder, to the lizard part of your brain. If you were thinking the very, very worst thing in the world at that moment, they're the ones who say it. I don't agree with it, but they do it well. And I think it's probably right that LBC, as a broadcaster, has had to let her go. A publisher actually has more latitude, and as for the moment, Mail Online are holding on to Katie because people read her.
I think you're wrong about LBC. I think they caved into a bullying, baying mob who think they have the right to police people's thoughts. Look, everyone around this table, I'm sure, was horrified by that comment. You have every right to hate what Katie Hopkins says. You have every right to be offended by what she says. But what you don't have the right to do is to take that offence and mobilise it to wreck her life, to wreck her career. You don't have the right to do that because that is very ugly. The people who...
We don't know, by the way, how she left LBC.
Okay,
it could have been by mutual consent.
But what I noticed, the people who were calling for her to be fired on Twitter, these are people who present themselves as liberals. And what they were doing was the total opposite of liberalism. It was very ugly what they were doing, because what they want is what happens in dictatorship, and you just said, no, let me finish. You just said, we've got to be careful who we give TV shows and columns to. Why do we...
No,
you're policing
No, I'm
things.
sorry, but there is a distinction between, as you say, publishers and broadcasters. Broadcasters in this country have laws. Those laws require balance. That's the law. It says... Papers don't. I agree with you. Papers are comments free. The law says quite clearly that broadcasters have proper balance. Now, I've grown increasingly concerned that some of the balance actually isn't there, and that balance isn't letting Katie Hopkins run a programme then and someone else balancing it 3 days later. That's not balance.
Can I just ask you a question?
Let's
okay. See, I actually I disagree with you on this one, Greg. I'm not a Katie Hopkins fan. But I don't think she should have been fired. I think in the case of...
Well, we don't know she was fired.
Or whatever. Or she shouldn't have lost her show, let's say. In the case of LBC, there is balance, because straight after Katie Hopkins, they've got Majid Nawaz, whose views are completely opposite to hers. And I think the problem we have, particularly with those that are sort of a bit more liberal, and I suppose we could call ourselves a bit PC, is we try to shut down this type of thinking, and it's there, and as a result, people get resentful. And my point with Katie is, I do think that there, unfortunately, are a lot of people who do think the way she does, and what we need to do is make sure that those of us that don't agree with her are actually having a strong counter-narrative to people like that. We can't shut it down, because when you shut it down, that's when people get resentful.
Nick, sorry, we have to bring in other people sometimes. Nick, the Kelvin MacKenzie case is a bit different, isn't it? Because Kelvin, I don't, for the life of me, know what made him write that piece about Liverpool. I mean, he's got a whole history with Liverpool, and I also don't understand why the editor let it go in the paper. But I mean, if you actually, what he said about Liverpool is, talking about Ross Barkley, the footballer, he is an attractive catch in the Liverpool area, where the only men with similar pay packets are drug dealers, and therefore not at nightclubs, as they are often guests of Her Majesty. And he was pretty unpleasant about Liverpool. And given his whole history with Hillsborough, wasn't it a really unwise thing for him to do?
I think it's a fair point that someone else must have seen it. It couldn't have just stormed straight into the papers. I'm a columnist, as many of us have been around here. You don't just press a button, it suddenly appears on page 17. If someone normally has a look at it. I'll tell you what Kelvin MacKenzie said in just a second. Just to run something past you. I mean, Greg, you did actually say that broadcasters and editors need to be careful about the people that they choose. I don't know that it was on your watch, but there's a fair chance when you were running the BBC, you probably employed Jonathan Ross. And he, of course, got tied up with that hideous episode with Russell Brand. I don't blame you for that. You hire these people.
That was a one-off, Nick. Come on, Kelvin and
hold on. Let me just finish. Indeed, I'll come to Kelvin in just a second. So I think sometimes you give people and then they have the licence. As for Kelvin, of course, the other aspect was that he made unfortunate reference to Ross Barkley's physical demeanour, and I can't remember whether it was a gorilla or an ape or whatever it might turn out to be. And then we subsequently learned that Ross Barkley's one of his grandfathers was of Nigerian. Yeah. So then it became a racist storm. So we just need to say this for Kelvin MacKenzie, because that also played into it. And I'm quite happy to declare myself that I've worked for Kelvin. I'm a huge fan and admirer of Kelvin, and I've learned a lot from him. This is what he said: "I had no idea of Ross Barkley's family background, and nor did anybody else. For the mayor of Liverpool and a handful of others to describe the article as racist is beyond parody." And I leave you with this idea, which is, for all the columnists around here, I write stuff, admittedly probably not as pungent, as pithy or personal as Kelvin does, but I honestly don't think I can be expected to research the lineage of every person I ever write about to find out whether they have a Muslim or someone of a different race or a different colour or whatever it might be.
Nick, I understand that, and I agree with that. But don't you feel that over the years, people who are writing columns in newspapers are becoming more and more unpleasant?
Can I ask my question, because it relates to this? Since I've started doing the plays, you have made many comments about me and my style of writing, and I've made comments here which you have made clear to me that you're offended by. So should I be sacked from the pledge?
That's a bloody... Where do I sign up for that?
No,
that is a great idea.
I'm quite happy for you to make the comments you make. I don't agree with many of them. I know. And I also think... But my concern is, which is what I just said to Nick, my concern is that columnists, in a world where... to get viewers, to get readers, you go more and more and more extreme and more and more personal.
Columnists write that. You write it because you feel it.
I was quite relieved. I like Katie Hopkins, by the way. As a person, it's Jekyll and Hyde. She's a very nice woman.
Precisely.
And she's had health problems as well. But I felt, in a way, relief, because they're massive competition, because they are so strident, vociferous, and so outspoken, Greg. This is the market for it.
You don't say it to upset people, to make controversy. You say it because you believe it.
Well, I think with Katie she does, because like Rachel said, she's actually a nice person one-on-one.
Let me read out
Not sure about Kelvin.
Let me read a quote out from Jack Monroe. She said... She's talking about David Cameron. She tweeted this: because he uses stories about his dead son as misty eyes rhetoric to legitimise selling our NHS to his friends. Now, what do you think about that? She's left wing. She said that.
To be fair to her,
she kept her column in The Guardian.
To be faid to her, what she said she'd written a personal apology to the Camerons and said, "I'm deeply sorry about that tweet. I'm ashamed of myself."
But it still went out to a lot of people before she apologised.
Yeah, sure, and I don't think think it's a thing only of the right. I think it's for the left as well. I think the whole tone of the debate has become more unpleasant. And I think the arrival of shock jocks, really, which is from America, to here. I'm surprised, personally, that Ofcom haven't got more involved in looking for proper balance and the tone of some of the discussion that now goes on.
But you can't imagine columnists write what they write every week just to be controversial.
Oh,
The reason, you're wrong.
But Carol,
columnists write what they think and what they believe and what their opinions are. Rachel, don't they? But you don't write it to be controversial.
Well, Carol, we've also got to say, we've all written columns.
Your
and
opinions
sometimes it's not because you've got a burning... I am for you for the moment. We've also got to let people know that actually you do have to fill a space every week as well, Carol. It's not that you've got this burning desire to get something off your chest every single week. It's a job, and she was doing her job, and she needed to keep her numbers up.
And in Katie's case, this was her own personal Twitter. She did not say this on LBC.
No, but it was the wrong thing to say.
Oh, we agree with that. Of course it's the wrong thing to say.
But she should still have the right to say it. We do not have the right to police people's thoughts.
Hang on. She still has the right to say it on Twitter. What she hasn't got the right to say it is on a broadcast.